You're watching The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ MV, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the God. We are The Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building this morning.
Yes.
I actually thought he was here before, but he wasn't. That's because my mother-in-law watches the show.
Let's be clear. He confused you
the time
with Jerry Springer, Steve.
Oh, geez.
Man,
I'ma
you should
tell
be
you why.
insulted.
You know what? I was flying back from Las Vegas yesterday, and the flight attendants were like, "Oh, you're from Jerry Springer, you know?" And I'm like, "Man, I've had my own show for 10 years now."
Yeah.
For 10 years.
You know who I was thinking? The Playboy guy.
Oh, my God,
that
Envy,
runs
this
the
is
bunny
all
ranch.
wrong.
Yes.
No.
He looks like him a little
You
bit.
talking
Oh
about
my
Dennis
God, that guy's
Hoff?
like 80
He
years
does
old.
not
Dennis
look
Hoff.
like
Yeah,
Dennis
I know.
Hoff. You are
Jesus.
crazy.
Hey, you want some moisturizer, Steve? I got
Wow.
some lotion. You need anything? You want something?
Steve Wilkos,
Man, if I
ladies
look
and
that
gentlemen.
bad.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I can't blame you if you feel like leaving now.
Jesus Christ.
But congratulations on 10 years.
10
Thank
years.
you. Thank
you
you.
are officially the most successful security guard since Suge Knight.
Flash police officer.
And I
right?
do feel like running people over, too, so.
Now, you used to be a cop, right?
Yeah.
In Chicago.
Yep.
How was that? Because that's probably one of the worst areas in the country right now.
Yeah. My dad was a police officer in Chicago for 30 years, and I wanted to do it. And, you know, I just came out of the Marines, so when I did it, I really enjoyed doing it. But then you just kind of get beaten down because, you know, people don't like the police.
Right.
You're fighting all the time. You know, you're just working midnights, holidays, you know, and you don't make a lot of money. So it's just, after, you know, like I said, if you get a gun and a badge, you're 26 years old, you're going out, catching a bad guy, it was fun. But after about 7 or 8 years, I just was like, nah, this isn't going to be for me long term.
So you didn't retire. You just decided.
I had enough to draw a pension, but I pulled my pension because for a lot of reasons financially, I didn't want a pension. So, yeah, but I could have retired. I had 12 years. You only need 10.
Oh, so you've done it all. You was a Marine.
Yeah, I was in the Marines for
cop?
6 years, yeah.
So you hate when Colin Kaepernick kneels for the flag, then?
No, I don't hate it. I mean, it's his right.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't hate him. I think, you know, there is an issue. He's not doing it just, you know, for, you know, any silly reason.
Yeah.
I think he's really doing it because he has a problem with what's going on in the country. I have no problem with that at all. But I think then the media gives it too much attention also.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, he did it. You're going to cover it, but now it's just dragging on.
Right.
You know, I'm
Yeah.
like, come on, man, let's move on to
The
something else.
NFL has said he has the right to do it. Everybody knows he has the right to do
Right,
it. But people are
exactly.
acting like he's anti the United States.
Anti-military, anti-police.
And I understand he's not, and that's why I'm saying, like, people are like, you know, people burn flags and stuff, and it's like, well, that's kind of why the military fights. So you have the right to do things like that. I mean, whether you like it or not, you have freedoms in this country.
And doesn't it bother you when they say he's anti-military, but you watch the way they treat our veterans in this country?
Oh my God! I mean, it's an embarrassment with the VA and the treatment with these guys. And the other day it came out that 22 veterans kill themselves every day.
Yikes!
You know, there's
Every
bigger
day,
problems than
wow.
Colin Kaepernick kneeling, right?
Right.
Now, how did you get to the Jerry Springer show?
I was walking out of the police station one night at 1 o'clock in the morning, and somebody said, "Hey, you want to work the Jerry Springer show tomorrow?"
So random.
Yeah,
Did you know the person?
Yeah, it was a guy I worked
Okay.
with. Mike. He actually runs the security on my show now.
Was it the first episode of Jerry ever? Or
No,
okay.
this was in 1994. So he had been on a couple years. The first year he taped in Cincinnati, then they moved to Chicago. So it's probably the third year they were in Chicago, and the show was really boring at that time. But they were doing a Ku Klux Klan show, so they wanted some off-duty cops in the studio. And so I was one of the guys, and I thought it was going to be for one day. And then a couple weeks later, they called me back. They liked me, and then the show changed, where it became, you know, confrontational.
Became WWE.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, and man, we had some really drag-out fights. It wasn't like WWE, which is mostly staged.
Right.
You know, we had really butt-kicking fights.
Did you ever
know.
get injured?
I had 2 back surgeries, a concussion, tore my groin, and a million cuts and scratches.
So people
Oh,
were
so
really
that's why
swinging
they
back.
and that's why they give you your own show, so you didn't sue them. It was like,
Yeah, we got to take
Remedy
care of
this.
this guy. No, they it's like they didn't even think of giving me my own show. I mean, that's a crazy thing. People like take, you know, credit. Oh, I got Steve's show. No, you didn't. I mean, they basically, when Jerry went on the Dancing with the Stars, they couldn't shut down the production of the show, so they needed somebody to fill in. Well, they got the cheapest guy they could get, me. Because if they brought anybody else in, they'd have to pay him, you know, pretty good money. So they gave me a bone. They tossed me a little bit of money, but So they thought Jerry would go on Dancing with the Stars and be the first one voted off. Well, he ended up being on there for like 6 weeks.
They had really high
Well, I
hopes
ended
for
up
him.
hosting like 30 shows, and when those shows they aired, they rated really well. So I guess somebody was like, let's give this guy
Give him a
show.
shot.
Right.
So it wasn't like somebody came up with the idea of giving me a show. It was
You're
kinda
always
like
in the right place.
forced on them, right? You know, yeah.
So
I
you
mean,
never had aspirations, Steve? Because that's kind of random. Like, I mean,
Very random.
if Jerry takes off, it's like, okay, let's go grab whoever another talk show guy is. Why are you?
Yeah, and I mean, nobody ever in the history of TV did less work than me to get my own show. Because I didn't want my own show. I never thought of getting a TV show.
It just happened.
I was doing security. That was what I did for a living. I was a cop, security. And, you know, I never tried, never auditioned. They just, oh, you're going to fill in. Okay, you know. And I'm sure I was terrible when I hosted the Springer Show because I didn't know what I was doing, and I wasn't polished. I wasn't comfortable. But then after you do like anything for a while, you get used to it.
get used to it, right.
Yeah, so.
What does your wife and kids think?
Well, my wife's my executive producer, so.
Oh, she's part. She's
You
Yeah.
met her on
Yeah.
Jerry Springer.
Yeah, we met on Jerry Springer, and.
Was it a fight scene or?
No.
She was
Well,
working.
She walked on stage, and I said, if that's not a man, I'm going to marry her, so. And,
That's romantic.
Why? She
that's
look
a
manly?
true story. No, because you never knew. We had a lot of transsexuals on
Right.
the show.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
so
yeah.
I was. You're never sure, you know.
Well,
So
what if she used to be a man?
Have you ever made that?
What if she had used to be a man, but made a
I'd
great...
still marry her. She's pretty
There
good.
we go.
Now, Steve, we see some strange stuff on Jerry. Did you ever make that mistake before? Like you saw something hot and you.
Well,
kicked
you
it
know
to
what? The strangest thing that ever happened in my mind, and you know, we had a lot of those situations, and we had transsexuals on the show that were just absolutely gorgeous. But we had this one dude. He was a guy, and he got in a fight with another guy, and they start ripping each other's shirts off. And then the one guy just had one perfectly formed female breast. I mean, it was gorgeous. And so if like we break for commercial, and we go backstage, and I go, "Hey, dude, what's up with that?" He goes, "Oh, I was just born that way." And I go, "You didn't let anybody know?" He goes, "Well, I didn't think anybody would be interested. Like, who cares?"
How much money you can make as a one-titted man in
A
America?
uniboob.
Right, and it was good. And I asked him
touch
out
it?
for dinner, and no,
You went to dinner with him.
Now, do you remember the first fight you broke up on Springer?
not really. No,
It wasn't the first show, the Ku Klux Klan show?
no, it was boring. Nothing happened that show. It was later. Probably not even. So I was doing the end of a season in '94. So the season ended like April or May. And then when we came back that September, that's when the fighting started happening. But I couldn't tell you the first fight I broke up.
And none of it was scripted?
No. I mean, honest to God, if I brought in an uncensored tape and you watched that, it's so violent. Even me and my wife. And then when we saw the second one, my wife was the co-executive producer on the Springer Show when I was on it. And even us. And I was on stage. I'm on all those tapes. And even watching it from a different perspective, I said, man, this is crazy. This is really nuts. This is really violent. So, I mean, listen, when the midget's dating the hot stripper on the show, that might be a little scripted. But when we had these hillbillies on that were sleeping with each other's wives,
That was really happening.
you didn't have to provoke them. They wanted to fight.
Do you have to wait to react? Because I noticed sometimes you let them get a little close sometimes, and then
You know
go,
what? There was guys that were like little jerky, jerk off, and I said, okay, hold back a little bit. Let this guy get his ass kicked,
Yeah.
And then, there's other guys okay, let's get in there, break it up right away. So it depends on how much I liked you.
Now, did people try to shoot the idea down when they first said, let's give Steve Wilkos his own show? Was it people that was like, he's just a security?
Well, yeah, that's what everybody said.
Yeah.
I mean, and then when we went to L.A. and we, doing the whole media thing with all the new shows being announced, I mean, people laughed in my face. They said,
Right.
you're not going to last 13 weeks.
I remember when you first started and I was at Sirius and I interviewed you right when the first season was starting.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I wonder how is this going to be like an ongoing thing? It seems like you toned it down a little bit too as far as the...
Well, the first 2 years, we had the original producer from Jerry Springer producing my show. And it was almost like he was doing the show because just pounding on the podium, always calling me over, telling me to scream all the time. And that wasn't me. So then when he got fired or he quit, whatever the case may be, my wife took over and she said, no more of that. Just be who you are. And when we did that, that's when the ratings really started to climb. So it was all interest. Best interest for my show was to let my wife take over.
Now you're doing 10 years. Those same people that said this show was only going to last 13 weeks, do you throw a middle finger at them right now? Tell them kiss my ass.
You know what? I
now?
don't even care about them, and I didn't care about them then. I've never failed at anything in my life. I was a good Marine. I was a good cop, and now I'm a good talk show host. And I was a great security guard on Jerry Springer. So the one great thing I learned from the Marine Corps is a work ethic. And so when I got my show, I got on every plane ride to go to every small town in America to promote the show, and shook every hand and did every radio interview and woke up, early in the morning. And I think a lot of people, and you look at all the shows that have come out in the last few years, Katie Couric, Jeff Probst, Ricky Lake, Queen Latifah, all these people that are much bigger stars than me, and they fail. And I think it's because they don't realize the hard work that goes into keeping your show on the air and
it probably helped that you didn't have that name that other people had, so maybe it did make you go harder as far as promoting it to make it do well, instead of sometimes people assume, well, I'm a celebrity already, people know me, I don't really need to.
Exactly. And I think that's a big part of the problem with all these shows failing. And then other things like when they brought back Ricky Lake and Arsenio Hall, I think that they're going to walk back in and their fans are just going to follow them again. Right. Well, a lot of your fans, they've grown up.
They're
like
50
Ricky
years
Lake,
old now.
Right? They're different people. They're not. I mean, I certainly don't watch the same things I did in my 20s. And now I'm in my 50s. I don't watch the same things anymore. So, if you don't stay in the eye, you kind of lose it.
What was your craziest episode?
Well, on my show, it was we had this woman who thought her daughter was poisoning her. She thought she was pouring bleach in her orange juice.
Right. Oh, that's when you got hit. Yeah.
Yeah. And the daughter she was really this cute young girl, and she seemed so sweet and innocent. I thought for sure she didn't do it. Well, she failed her lie detector test, and her mother flipped out, and I never even saw it. There was this chest in back of the stage, and there was a metal bowl with like a serrated edge, and she picked it up. She tried to hit her daughter, but she cranked me right in the eye.
Oh, no.
And I thought my eye came out of my head. I really did. I went down. My wife came running up, and but then I realized I was okay, and I finished the show, and I went into my green room, and the lawyer came and said, "Oh, don't worry, we're going to cut that all out." I go, "You better not. Leave that in." And
I got injured. You got to leave that in.
Well, half my audience wants to see, Steve's a bully, let him go down, Well, and I said, well, let him show it. And it was our highest rated show ever.
Wow.
So, yeah.
What happens when women flirt on the show with you or do things like propose and your wife is there working and they
Wife
don't
whispers
realize?
in his ear, don't you look.
No, my wife's really cool about it. She knows it's going to happen. So, it's flattering, but, I've been married a long time and I love my wife. So, I mean, I just.
Do you ever feel really bad about situations like dealing with women who are dealing with domestic violence?
You know what? And I don't even. That's a great question. We just did a show. We taped it. We've only been in studio for 3 weeks now for the 10th season. And we had this young black girl on. And I don't even know what I think she was involved with a guy that was just bad news. And she got really emotional. And I was talking to her like, your dad. And she goes, I don't have a dad. And the way she said it, it really like did something. It's like twisted my stomach. And I put my arm, I go, I want to be your dad. You can look at me as your dad. And I really meant it. And so like that, like when you hear people like that and they're genuine, I mean, some people I just don't like on my show. I'm just like, get the hell out of here.
Is that the one who got beat up 15 times?
No.
Okay.
I don't even know if it aired. It might be on Today's show, as a matter of fact.
So you telling her that, does that mean you have stayed in her life?
Oh, we stay in, and that's the thing with my show. We have a psychologist. My staff of all the producers, the producing teams, we do follow-ups on all these people that are on the show 7 days, 14 days, 21 days. We just can't do these type of shows now, just throw them back out in the world. I mean, we make sure that we get them into programs if they need to get in certain programs or just help them out any way we can, and we stay in touch with them.
I think that's great because we do this segment, Ask E, where people ask questions, and sometimes people have like the craziest problems, and your heart just goes out to them, and you're like, I don't want to, I can respond to you and give you advice, but then after that, we have to make sure that we still keep it going.
Right, and that's what we do.
Now, you talked about the young lady on the premiere who got beat up 15 times, and her boyfriend admitted to it.
Yeah.
Do you ever just want to whip his ass right there on the spot?
I would love to. And listen, I'm not going to lie. When I was a police officer and we went on that type of situation and you had to arrest a guy, and if he got a little frisky and started fighting, well, maybe got a little overzealous.
So
with
justified
the force.
police brutality. I get
And,
it.
and I really had no problem with that. But the sad thing was, we beat back there 2 days later because she let him back
Right.
in. And that was the most frustrating part about it.
Can you arrest somebody for that? Like, say he's admitted that he's been beating her.
Well,
Is
most
that now
of,
a crime?
Well, most of the people that appear on the show aren't from Stamford, Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
So the police have no jurisdiction. But there's cases where people have used the tapes of the show and went back, and the judge has watched the show, and he's, used it as evidence against people, So it does happen. And some people, we've escorted them to jail. They were wanted or they were going to turn themselves in, and we sent our security with them to take them to jail, and they turned themselves in.
What do you think about the police department now, as far as, because, you've been a cop a long time ago, and it seems like the police department has changed so much.
Well, I think, listen, I don't think people ever like the police. For a simple fact is when you do have interaction with police, it's mostly a negative thing happening in your life.
It's not like you won some money.
You're getting a parking ticket. You're
Right.
you ran a red light. So, people
Somebody
are pissed
called
off.
the police on you. You're
Right.
getting arrested.
Right. So most of your interaction with the police is not too positive. So right there, people don't like the police. But now, and listen, and I think the biggest difference now is cell phones, right? Cameras, everybody's got a camera. So a lot of things are being captured that when I was a policeman, there was no video cameras. The first big change was the Rodney King thing, when somebody had a camera and they recorded it. Well, now everybody records everything with the cell phone. And what I do think is a problem is a lot of people see the aftermath of police using force and everything, but they're not seeing what happened before that caused the police to interact with this individual. Now, I'm not an idiot. I've seen shootings that are totally unjustified, and those policemen should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I have no problem with that. I don't want a thin blue line, and if you shoot somebody, listen. And there's a couple cases. One in Louisiana where the guy was around with his wife and the kid was in the back, and he got pulled over for broke a taillight.
Oh, that was
Nobody in
Philando Castile.
First of all,
That's Minnesota.
I never pulled anybody over in my life for a broken taillight, right? That's a waste of time.
So they fit the description.
And if somebody ends up dead because of a broken taillight, that is like the guy in South Carolina. He pulled the guy over.
Walter Scott.
Right. And the guy's running away, and the cop lights him up. Well, that guy should go to jail for the rest of his life.
Absolutely.
But those become the focus. And really, those, if you look at the numbers, those are very small numbers of bad shootings. And then, you have this big movement against the police. And I'm like, you need the police. You really do. If you don't have it, society is going to be chaotic.
I think it's more against police brutality, though.
Well, of course.
It's hard.
But I'm saying 99% of the police men and women that go to work, nobody's looking to kill anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was a policeman in the most violent district in America. And I had plenty of times I could have shot somebody. They had a knife, they had something in their hand. I always gave them a chance. Put it down, put it down, put it down.
Did you ever have to shoot at someone?
I shot at somebody one time. I got into a shootout. But it was just they were shooting at me. So,
I feel like it was,
I was buried behind a car and I wasn't even looking at what I was shooting.
I feel like it would be less resistance against the police if more people heard people talk the way you spoke just now. Like more people on the force now just simply said these things are wrong.
Well,
people need to be prosecuted.
I just really believe that most police men and women go to work just like I did. You wanted to go to work and you wanted to come home. Like I said, I could have shot 50 guys. I never shot anybody because I always gave them a chance. Hey, put it down, put it down. And I certainly never had my gun pointed at somebody that didn't even have a weapon. You got to be ready to fight. And that's my other point, and I'm glad you brought that up. I think you have shootings because you got people that have no business being a police officer. They've lowered the standards across America to get people to be policemen, and they have no experience with using force in their own personal life. Like, we're guys, I'm sure you've been in a fist fight in your life, right? So even though you might not enjoy it, you don't like it, you're willing to defend yourself. You got these guys or women, whoever, that have never used force in their life, and now the only way they're going to use force is with the gun.
Yeah.
Right? And so I just think that, the standards have been lowered, that you got people that have no business being a police. when I was in the police academy, even when I was going through, I just came out of Marine. So police academy was nothing. It was like nursery school for me. But you had people that couldn't get over that 6-foot wall, and that was one of the conditions. Well, then after the weekend, I see these guys, they got their blue uniform. You got your blue uniform after you got over that wall.
All right.
I go, when did they go over the wall? Oh, over the weekend. Okay, yeah, right. Nobody's coming in on a weekend going over that wall. But they pass them
So
through.
they're just pushing people through.
Pushing people
on some,
through.
like No Child Left Behind type thing.
And I think, one thing we should do is give priority to veterans, if they want to be police officers, because they've been in these combat situations and, experience under fire. So I think if they do raise the level to become a police officer and get people that are experienced.
And also, you don't make a lot of money, so maybe if
right, it's public service, right? I mean, you do it because you're not looking to get rich, but you're going to get a good job, you're going to get a decent salary, good benefits, retirement early. Those are the draws to it. You're not going to become a millionaire unless you get your own talk show.
You was a professional wrestler for a slight period, right?
Yeah, well, because and that's when Barry Diller, who owned the Springer Show at the time, or the company that owned Jerry Springer, he didn't like the fighting. So we had taped like 50 shows. We're getting ready to go on summer hiatus, and he was like, "No more fighting." I said, "Oh, well, if there's no more fighting, there's no need for me."
Job, right.
Right. So they had been asking me to wrestle, and I started wrestling because paid pretty decent. And
What was the wrestler name?
just Steve from Jerry Springer. I mean, that's everybody knows. And I would wear my Jerry Springer security shirt, and a lot of times, I mean, talk about choreographed. We'd go over it, and he said, "Just stick your arm. I'm going to run into it. I'm going to go down." I'm like, okay, beautiful.
Was the Steve chant organic when it started?
Well, I certainly didn't start it.
Yeah.
So, people, it was crazy because as the show got very popular, people knew I was a police officer, and people started chanting my name. But it was crazy. All the people, and it was kind of sad because people would write into the show and they're like, I'm in this really horrible situation. You think Steve could come to my house and help me? And we actually did it for a while. We did Steve to the Rescue within the Jerry Springer Show. And I went, and most of the time it was women in domestic violence situations, and I'd go and help them get out of it and get the guy locked up and stuff. So, but it is sad that there's so many people involved in bad relationships and bad situations.
You described me as the type when you was younger you liked to fight. Like you would smash the bottle across your head in the bar.
Well,
who wants it with Steve?
You know what's funny? I think I look at my son now. My son's a really sweet and sensitive kid, and I think I was the same way. But I grew up in Chicago. I had no choice but to, you go to school and you fought, and that was in the 60s and the 70s, and it was just
Mafia time.
I grew up like with the animals. I really did, and believe me, I don't want my kids to go through that. I wouldn't want anybody's kid to go through that. But it made me who I am, and so I don't look back with regrets or anything, but I don't want my kids growing up with violence and fighting all the time, and
But you want to make sure they know how to fight.
And my daughter, man, she'd kick anybody's ass. She's boxing, and she's tough.
Well,
So-
you found a way to profit off your savagery, Steve.
There you go. There you go.
No, somebody else found me to make some money off me. Believe me.
Now, what is your take on the Black Lives Matter movement?
Listen, like I said, when you have all these bad shootings that are very public, people are going to be upset, and and there should be a conversation about it. Or, I have no problem with that movement either. But let's not lose focus of the fact that most, and I mean most, again, 99% of police want to do a good job. They want to serve the community, the public. And again, if you are doing something wrong as a policeman, hey man, prosecute these guys. They shouldn't be. Look, Rahm Emanuel, the Officer McDonald who shot the black kid 16 times. I mean, that's mind-blowing when you think about it. If you've ever handled a handgun in your life, I think my 9mm only hold 15 rounds, right? So this guy had to reload at some point and shoot this kid some more. And what? Even if he had a knife, let's say he had the biggest knife in the world, you can step back, step back. There's no 16 times. Oh my God!
That's crazy.
I didn't shoot my gun 16 times in 12 years.
That's real.
Yeah, that's and Rahm Emanuel, the mayor of Chicago, covered up that videotape as long as he could. And that's a disgrace, right?
Right.
They should, and then the police union's wrong too in Chicago, because then they gave this guy a job while he's fired from the police department. He's waiting murder trial, and that Guy McDonald should go to jail for the rest of his life, as far as I'm concerned.
Why is there such a blue wall of silence, though? Like, why don't just more cops say what you just said?
I think because you're afraid. Because if you start talking at this, you might be the next guy at the end of a weapon, You might not be looking at it either. So I think that's part of the problem.
Wow. You think the body cameras are a great idea now? Having the police
I'll
wear
be honest,
cameras?
I wouldn't want to wear one because I think sometimes if you did everything exactly by the book, you would never be an effective policeman. You know what I mean? Sometimes, listen, Chicago now, because of all this protesting and everything against the police, most policemen, if you read in the paper, they're not doing anything. I mean, the guns taken off the street has dropped dramatically. Arrests for murder have dropped drastically. And I guarantee you, and I worked in those neighborhoods, so I know, there's a lot of those people, they want the police doing their job because they want to walk down the street. They want their kids to be able to walk down the street. So they want stop and frisk. They want gangbangers harassed. And,
as they should be.
Right. You have people in their communities that they just simply want their kids to walk to school and not get shot. Right. And if you take that away from the police to be the police, there was times, we'd say, get off the corner. They get off the corner. We made them get off the corner, if you know what I mean. Right. So, and there was people that loved me on their beat because they knew I wasn't going to tolerate guys doing stuff on the beat like that. So,
well, let's ask the $1 million question. Who's a better talk show host, Steve Wilkos or Jerry Springer?
I'm the best talk show host on TV, period.
Okay, Steve.
All right. And you can catch him every Monday. The season starts yesterday. It started yesterday at 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. on Channel 11. Congratulations.
And you and Jerry got a good relationship, right?
Oh, I love Jerry. I mean, Jerry's been great to me. And, think about it. Like, most stars would feel threatened, right? But Jerry's has always been the biggest champion of my show. And, I mean, he never felt threatened by me. Some people have egos and they're like, Yeah. But Jerry's not like that. And nobody's done more for me than Jerry.
And he makes money off your show too, right?
Yes.
So,
That's another reason.
So if you're out there listening, come on my show, get your own show so I can get some of that free money.
Well, there you have it. It's The Breakfast Club. It's Steve Wilkos.
The Breakfast Club. Every weekday morning. Tune in.